It's wonderful to see you here. How are you enjoying the summit so far?
It's been wonderful. Great to see so many leaders and companies coming together. As you know, AI is a pivotal technology in the world right now, impacting sector after sector of our economy, from energy to biopharma to logistics and mobility and transportation, but also government itself.
Yes.
So at a government summit, I think it's a very appropriate topic because how we run governments, how we relate to our stakeholders, be it the citizens themselves, be it other governments, is AI impacts this as well. So this is the moment, I think, really to discuss this, both in the positive sense, but also what warnings do we need to heed in terms of how we deal with AI? How can we prevent the misuse of AI? These are all relevant topics right now.
Thank you. You've perfectly set the scene for me. So we're going to dive right in. This is going to be a real treat for any of those tech enthusiasts and those closely monitoring the evolution of AI. As you rightly said, as we heard His Excellency preface our conversation, he was talking about the continuation of pivots. As we see the evolution of AI and next-gen emerging 10 technology, it's inevitable that we will keep pivoting. What don't we know? What's the next big thing? What's on the horizon?
So I would mention two things. LLMs obviously have caught people's attention. 2023 was the year of Gen AI and GPTs, and I think everyone here has tried them and gotten fun pictures out of them, and maybe also some college essays for your kids. So a lot of interesting things happened in 23. But I think what companies and governments are starting to realize, Rebecca, is that now it's time to go beyond just LLMs. LLMs have their use. They're a tool in the toolbox, but there's other tools in the toolbox as well. Let's talk about some examples of that. Well, first off, if you want to create a new drug, right now, if you think about Alzheimer's, think about Parkinson's, brain cancer, pancreatic cancer, these are 4 diseases, Rebecca, that we don't have a good solution for. 40 years of research in each of these areas, unfortunately, have not produced any real successes in terms of medications that we can treat. And these affect people all around the world. We're all united. There's no border when it comes to illness. And so what do we do here? Well, if we go to an LLM and say, please make the molecular structure for a drug that would solve brain cancer, unfortunately, we're not going to get a great answer, because if the answer was in the web text that it was trained on, we'd have the answer, but we don't. And so we have to now go beyond just LLM. So what kind of AI are we talking about here? Well, LLMs, large language models, GPTs, Gen AI, what we've all been hearing about and using, really is dependent on training on huge amounts of data. That data generally comes from the web or other such sources. But what if you don't have data? And so while 2023 was the year of Gen AI, 2024 begins the era of Gen data, generative data. How do we create data from scratch, synthetic data, new data that we can then train AIs on? In the case of biopharma, in the case of drugs, we can do so by putting in the actual equations that govern how a molecule meets a receptor. So if we're going after a receptor in a brain tumor, if we're going after a receptor in the body for diabetes, for heart disease, for other diseases, we can actually now create a digital twin of that molecule, put it into the same GPUs that we've been talking about. Jensen opened up this government summit of NVIDIA. His GPUs, other GPUs made by Alphabet, Amazon, many other companies, AMD around the world. These same chips that are driving the large language models now drive another kind of AI. An AI where we generate new data based on the equations of how molecules fit together and based on millions of simulations. In a way, you can think of it like virtual clinical trials. We create a virtual human, we create the digital twin of the molecule, and we run that simulation billions of times. Each time, we change the molecule just a little bit. We add a carbon ring, we add something else, we take something else away, thereby finding the best molecular structure. Now with billions of data points, now again we can train an AI model. So this is what we call AI simulation, a different kind of AI, a complementary AI to LLMs. This is where breakthroughs are happening right now. This is not a future thing. Just recently, this past year, collaborators at UCSF and ourselves and others took a potential molecule for Alzheimer's, created a digital twin, ran these millions of simulations and ran AI on it, and it's now going to go to clinic in about 15 months from now. The original plan, Rebecca, was for this molecule to go to clinical trial in the year 2031. So you're talking about 7 years of savings, 7 years sooner to be in medicine for patients. This is big stuff. And so this is the moment to go now beyond just GPTs.
This is incredible. So quantum simulation, if we understand it, will have the biggest impact in the near term and specifically with the sector of medicine, therapeutics, diagnostic care.
That's one, but let me just add another one relevant certainly to this region here that we're in right now in the Emirates, which is chemical simulation as well. And so if I have the output, say hydrocarbon output, and let's say it's quite low value, I want to make it high value. I want to make it into graphene. I want to make it into carbon fiber to be used for lightweight vehicles. Right now, when you think about electric vehicles, and there's more and more on the road here in the Emirates and other places, you want to make them as light as possible so they can go as far as possible on one charge. Well, to do that, we've got to start replacing the aluminum with carbon fiber. Where can carbon fiber come from? It can come from hydrocarbon output. And so again, doing chemical simulation, not just biopharma simulation, but now simulation of different chemical structures coming out of the hydrocarbon chain, this again is another major application of AI simulation.
And slightly tangential, but just picking up on what you were saying about developments in the medical field, how much will screening make a difference? And obviously we've made massive forays here in the UAE, also Saudi and elsewhere, but some countries have screened everybody. Yeah. Are we nearly there? How will AI help us?
Well, diagnostics and screening is fundamental to great healthcare. We know that it's always easier to prevent or catch early than it is to catch something late. Here again, AI and quantum come together for a groundbreaking, life-saving kind of technology. We know that ECG is standard of care right now, electrocardiogram is standard of care, but we also know that it misses many cardiac events. And so what can we do about that? Is there an inexpensive way, a portable way to see how the heart is doing? And sure enough, now there is. And so when we think about quantum, most people think about quantum computers, but actually there's something very near term that's happening right now, and that is a quantum sensor. A quantum sensor is a device that, for example, can detect how your heart's doing, because everyone's heart here, I hope everyone has a heart here, has a magnetic field coming out of it. And that magnetic field can be picked up by a magnetic sensor. That sensor, though, is so sensitive, it picks up your iPhone, it picks up these translation modules, picks up everything in the room. That's where AI comes in. The AI is able to read what the sensor is seeing about our heart and also filter out the iPhone, the watch, the other stuff that's in the same hospital room. And so this is now technology that's in emergency rooms today in clinical trial. In the next 24, 36 months, we'll see this adopted in the US, here in the Emirates, I hope, and around the world. So this technology, using a quantum sensitive sensor of magnetic sensor for the heart, and then applying AI to filter out the heart from all the other noise, this is a breakthrough technology that will help in the prevention and screening that we just talked about.
Superb. One of your passion projects, another subject close to your heart, is education. Talk to me about the potential implications for the technology you're seeing today, but also tomorrow, and the impact it will have on the next generation.
Well, if I were to sit down with world leaders, and here at the World Government Summit, I was able to sit down with a number of global leaders already, and more meetings are coming up today and tomorrow. The number one issue that I hear from leaders and that we share with leaders is upskilling and education. There's nothing more fundamental, because if you have a workforce that is constantly upskilling, if you have K through 12 university systems that are constantly upskilling, constantly staying at the edge, you're going to have a strong economy. You're going to attract the best people to your country. And so how do we do that at scale? And how do we do so with the best technology to get it out to all the people? And AI, I think, is one of the key tools to make that happen. But here's the big but. AI hallucinates. LLMs, I'm sure everyone here has had the experience. If you type in, what's the population of Mars? Anyone know what you get from a GPT? Now, as far as I know, there's not many people on Mars right now, but a GPT will tell you there's 2 billion people because it read a science fiction novel. Now, if we're educating people, that's not really going to be acceptable. If we're going to educate people to be doctors and nurses, engineers, lawyers, and other valuable roles in society, we have no margin of error when it comes to hallucinations. So what do we do? Here's the good news. Unfortunately, it involves another abbreviation, another acronym in the world of AI, and this is RAGs, R-A-Gs. retrieval augmented generators. What is a RAG? A RAG means that, Rebecca, I have the LLM, I have the ability to converse with it, that kind of nice facility of language in 100 different languages around the world. That's good. But when I say to the RAG, create a course for me on healthcare, create a course for me on energy, create a course on AI itself, even. What it does, we say, don't use your knowledge from the web, from Reddit, from all these random sources. Here's a corpus of documents. Here's a corpus of textbooks. Only use these for your answers as you populate the curriculum to then roll out to the students. And those students could be adults or could be kids. And so this RAG is an antidote. It's a solution for the kind of hallucination that we have found that are rampant. More than a third, sometimes a half plus, 50% plus of answers from LLMs are hallucinatory, because that's actually what it's made to do. It's actually not a bug. It's the feature of LLMs that it makes things together. And by the way, it's so confident in its wrong answers. That's part of the problem.
It's quite scary.
Very, very confident in its wrong answers. But one thing that we launched recently with a number of partners, Rebecca, is an LLM RAG for training women specifically to be doctors and nurses in the global south, in MENA, in India, and other countries. Why is this important? Because we do not have enough doctors, we do not have enough nurses around the world, particularly in these countries. And to scale, we cannot just suddenly magically create medical schools overnight. This allows you to go and learn the material from the RAG, that is from 1,000 medical textbooks that we licensed, that's correct, licensed, did not take randomly from the internet, did not use other people's copyright. We licensed this content, and that forms the corpus of training people in this healthcare course. They get a certificate, then they can go to the clinical side in a hospital, say, for example, here in the Emirates, and do their clinical rotation to then finish up becoming a nurse or a doctor. So this is going to be transformative in terms of education. And I think that every government, I would urge every government here in this room, here at this conference, listening to us on video after this conference, to consider very strongly how to use AI as a scalable way to get advanced education to all its people, particularly, Rebecca, in that there's going to be so many adults in the 5 to 7 next years that are going to be impacted initially by AI itself. Over time, we create more jobs with technology, but there's an interim period that we really have to reskill folks very quickly.
It sounds compelling. I'm convinced. I'm inspired. And as you say, when you're speaking truth to power, this is what government wants. So what's preventing us? Is it funding? Is it collaboration? What do we need to do to make the boat go faster?
Well, it's a great question. I think, first of all, those of us in the tech community, we have a responsibility.
Yeah.
We have a responsibility not just to put out technology, but to shape the technology with stakeholders such as governments, with stakeholders such as nonprofits and civil society, to make it usable and to make it reliable. And again, this is a great example, the use of RAGs to address this hallucinatory issue. Putting out an LLM out there in the world and saying, go ahead, good luck, and when it can make all these mistakes is not, I think, a responsible way to offer up a product. And so just as if you had a car, if you had a car company, you're producing a car, it would be irresponsible of you to produce a car that did not have good brakes, did not have good steering wheel. The same thing. If you're a tech company, and those of us in tech, we have a responsibility to come out with technology that can be used in this very, very positive way, in a reliable way. So that's the first thing, I think, that's holding things back, that the initial wave of products put out there, I'm not sure met the standard that I just put out there. So that's something that I think we need to do better in the tech world. Second, I think we need to engage very strongly with government leaders at all levels. I just spent some time on the Hill in Washington, D.C., engaging with senators, engaging with members of Congress, engaging with other branches of the government to make sure that we're there and we're there to engage, answer questions, listen, and say, what are the needs, right? So if you think about what are the needs of many, many parts of society, each part of society will have different kinds of needs. And so how do we get that going? Healthcare, back to your point about healthcare and screening and medical diagnosis, how do we give doctors and nurses around the world not a replacement for themselves, but a helper tool, a little parrot on the shoulder that says, hey, you're looking at a radiology exam, you're looking at an MRI, at a CAT scan. look at the lower left corner. I think I see something there. Ultimately, the doctor has the final word, but this kind of helper technology is something that AI can play a big role in.
Mm-hmm. The benefits are clear. We know where we want to go. We know that it's something of a minefield to navigate. Talk to me about the risks and potential challenges for societies.
Well, it's interesting. When we talk about AI, the initial blast of conversation around the world was that AI is going to kill everyone on the planet. Very, very positive outcome, I think, right? But in point of fact, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't really think that's the risk. And unfortunately, that discussion and controversy masked an actual risk that we do have to deal with right now, which is that AI is the most powerful tool in the hands of hackers that humans have ever created. And so when people think about hacking in, about ransomware, many companies in America, we just had 230 hospitals ransomwared in the last year. 230 hospitals across the United States had ransomware attacks where they had to shut down all or part of their hospital because of a ransomware attack. Because somebody got in, grabbed files, and held them ransom and said, unless you send a certain amount of Bitcoin or other kind of cryptocurrency, we're not going to release these files and you cannot restart the hospital. That is a danger to society. These critical functions of banking, hospitals, telco, trains, planes, transport, government, these national critical functions, we must protect them. And in the hands of hackers, AI is a very powerful tool. The other day I was with a CEO, Rebecca, and he said, I'm getting more and more spear phishing emails that are better and better written. In his case, he had a spear phishing email addressed to him that found and mentioned a small donation he made to a nonprofit that's focused on a disease that his daughter has, a $75 donation. So it looked very real to him to click and say, follow up on your donation, Evan. And so he almost did. And that would have given the keys to the kingdom to the hackers. And we all know recently that $25 million was transferred by a well-intentioned controller in the financial department of a large company where he got the email. It was a fake email, but looked real. He validated it. And then he had a Zoom call with 3 individuals, supposedly from his company, to validate that email. He did all the right procedures. He then sent the $25 million off, not to his own company, but unfortunately to hackers. All that was done because the individual hackers had on a face on them that was in the likeness of his colleagues at his workplace. And so AI is a really powerful hacking tool. And to counter that, of course, what do we use? AI itself.
Yeah.
AI is the necessary means by which we have to assume that hackers break into the firewall. We have to protect what's inside our companies using AI to continually monitor the integrity of our files and any vulnerabilities that we have. So the AI wars in hacking have begun, and that's something, fortunately, unfortunately, that we all have to now deal with.
Speaking of navigating and going from the ground to the air,
yes.
One particularly terrifying prospect is GPS spoofing. Talk to us about that and how you are looking into it and how sensing can play a part.
Well, anyone who's on a plane, anyone who's on a ship, and ultimately anyone in a car, particularly autonomous cars as they become more available, we all depend, of course, on GPS. We depend on navigation. If you're flying at 500 miles an hour, 700 kilometers an hour, if you're flying a fighter jet at 1,000 miles an hour, 1,500 or more kilometers an hour, then you better have GPS. And what's happened over the last 2-3 years, what's happened over the last few years is that we've seen more and more jamming of GPS. It's not hard to jam, by the way. You can go on the internet. I'm not saying you should do this, but you can go on the internet, and for about $600, you can find a little device. It's like a big walkie-talkie. And with that, you can jam all the GPS right here, for example, in this entire area of Dubai. Nobody could navigate with their GPS if you turned on this device. It's illegal in most countries to do that, but major countries, major state actors right now are using this technology and jamming GPS. What's worse than jamming is spoofing.
Yeah.
Because if you're spoofing GPS, you have no idea as an airline pilot that actually you don't have the right information. And it is public information that China is jamming around the Pacific region, Russia is jamming around the Ukraine region, and Iran is jamming here in the MENA region.
There's been examples that you can, in case people are unfamiliar, can you talk about some of the examples
Absolutely,
recently?
yeah. So 2 Qantas Airlines passenger jets full of passengers left Sydney. this past year, and were on their way to the destinations. As soon as they left the airspace of Australia, they're in international waters now, they lost all GPS. And in case you're wondering, how did they lose this GPS? A ship from the ocean below them radioed up on 121.5, the guard channel, the channel that's open all the time to pilots, and said, we are the PRC ship XYZ, and we are blocking all comms and GPS in this area. Now, a Qantas Airlines passenger jet cannot reroute. This is just enough fuel to get to where they're going. This is a dangerous scenario. Here in this region, about 7 different jets went temporarily into Iranian airspace, not knowing they were in Iranian airspace because they were spoofed and did not know that they were actually 60 nautical miles from where they actually thought they were. So this is happening, this is real, and NOTAMs have gone out. NOTAMs, Notice to Air Missions. These are the official advisories to the airline pilots and airlines of the world about this happening. So this is both a civilian issue and a military issue. So now, how does AI help us here? Well, again, we have to bring AI and quantum together. Our Earth is made in such a way, our magnetic field of the Earth, that we can actually navigate the way birds and whales do. How do birds navigate? I recently had the opportunity to go to Antarctica, and I saw a bird there that navigates 24,000 kilometers a year. That's an amazing feat for nature to have pulled that off. And the way it does it, of course, is mainly in part to the magnetic field of the Earth. We humans now have the ability to do the same with a sensor that can sense the magnetic field of the Earth, but then an AI that can interpret this signal to compare it to known magnetic maps of the Earth. We can now mimic what the birds and what the whales do. So AI and quantum, again, is a critical infrastructure piece for both civilian and military. It's a dual-use technology.
Yes, it's fascinating. We don't have much time left. I wish we did, because there's so much more ground to cover. But leave us with what you're most excited about. We've touched upon some of the incredible innovations that are coming up. But if you were to change our minds or change the world, what would you put out there?
I want to leave you with a taste of a future technology that's not here yet today, but it's in development in a strong way. Not in our company. This is not something that we do. Just want to point out something we call embodied AI. And embodied AI is kind of a fancy way of saying robots. And for decades now, all of us have dreamed of robots and said, oh, when are the robots coming? But actually, if you look around the world now, there's about 20 venture-backed companies, plus Tesla, plus a few large companies, that are actually making real headway. 5 different technologies have come together to say, hey, there's a real way to make a humanoid robot that has 2 legs and 2 arms. And why is humanoid so important? Why can't we just use the rolling robots or other kinds of robots? Well, our world is made for humans. When we had the Fukushima accident in Japan, and we said, wow, how come we couldn't go in and turn the knobs off? Those knobs were made for humans. And to get into those areas, you have to step over these special metal plates and things like that. A rolling robot cannot get in there. And so a humanoid robot can do many, many things, particularly things that we don't want humans to do. I'll give you a more real-world case just right at home, which is hospitals around the world. If you want hospitals to sanitize each room between patients with a UV wand, a human should not be holding a big, strong UV wand to sanitize a room to get rid of MRSA. MRSA kills hundreds of thousands of people a year. This is a strain that is resistant to antibiotics. But a robot can walk in, close the door with the right handle, and go under the bed, above the bed, do all the human kinds of things of sanitizing the room, and then leave the room for the next patient. So this is a real good example, and I've met several companies now specifically focused on robots for the hospital scenario. There's other robots, of course, for distribution centers and for assembly, light assembly in manufacturing. Figure is one of those companies, Figure, Mentee Robotics, and Agility Robotics. There's about 20 that recently we've written about and talked about. So I encourage everyone here to look out this year, 2024. Last year and the year before, we had a number of ChatGPT moments, about AI. My prediction to you is that this year and next year, you're going to see a number of ChatGPT moments for robotics. You're not going to see them roll off the assembly line, but you'll see very clear demonstrations, Rebecca, that this is something that is coming, that's going to be part of our society, that's going to be both a positive, but also, again, there's some potential threat involved in how we think about the jobs of the future. Net, it's going to create more jobs than it will impact. But we have to get ready for a society that has these kinds of humanoid robots walking amongst us. The next 24 months will be clear demonstrations. 24 to 48 months will be prototypes in a number of settings. And 48 to 60 months, we're going to start seeing some initial scaling of applications, particularly industrial use applications as well. So robotics or embodied AI is something I would definitely put on your radar if you're looking at the future.
On your radar. Speaking of radar, and just as a quick question before I let you go, day 2 of WGS 2024, I'm sure you have some very important meetings planned. Take us inside the room, conversations you've had so far and ones that you're looking forward to having.
Well, what's so exciting is when you come to the Emirates to me is the crossroads of the world right now. You come to the Emirates and you see governments coming together, like in this assembly here, but you also see different companies coming together, startups, large companies, old world, new world. You see people coming from all over the planet, and centering here in the Emirates. So I think that the government here with its open policy, its policy of clear, navigable roadmaps of policy, that's really been a very big invitation to come to this country and say, how do we actually interact with others? So it's almost like a Grand Central Station now of the world economy. That's how I would call the Emirates right now. If you look at Abu Dhabi, Dubai, if you look at these, the economic activity here, it's really because so many other countries are sending their best people here to interact and to partner up. Partnership and ecosystem is the name of the game. If you want to grow your company, then you have to have lots of partners. And this is a place, both the summit and in general the Emirates, I found that you can find a lot of partners.
Superb, thank you. And speaking of best people, he's right here. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Jack for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to see you.